Welcome to this episode of Bedroom Forensics, and we're talking exhumations. Now, sometimes it's necessary to exhume a dead body, and this may be because you're moving house and want your loved one's grave to be moved near to the new place, or the remains need to be transferred from one cemetery if it's scheduled to be demolished or developed, or because a court has ordered one for further forensic examination. Now, here in the UK, exhumations are pretty rare, and from what I've heard, they do tend to be traumatic for the family involved. They can take a long time to arrange and are pretty expensive. Now, if you're moving a body for personal reasons, you must get permission from a church or the appropriate authority. In some areas that are unconsecrated, you will need to get a licence from the Ministry of Justice. Now, if permission is granted, you'll be sent the date and time of exhumation, and it will happen out of working hours, usually around 4 or 5 in the morning. An environmental health officer will be present to make sure that the deceased person is treated with respect and that there is no threat to public health. Now, you will be charged for contractor fees, a new casket and transportation costs, and that's usually around £2,500 to £3,000, but from what I've heard, the prices just keep on going up. So that's the practicalities out the way, and I know you didn't come here to hear about how you can remove a dead body from a cemetery for purposes of putting them in a new grave. So, the forensic purposes. Well, an autopsy won't have always been performed on a body. In the UK, a post-mortem or an autopsy will be carried out if requested by a coroner, and that's if the death is unknown, following a sudden, violent or unexpected death, or it's carried out by a hospital doctor, and that's to find out more about an illness or the cause of death, or to further medical research and understanding. Now, a coroner is a judicial officer. It's either a lawyer or a doctor, and is responsible for investigating certain types of deaths. They will determine how someone died and whether an inquest is needed. Post-mortems provide useful information about how, when and why someone died. They enable pathologists to obtain a better understanding of how diseases spread. A post-mortem will be carried out as soon as possible, up to 2 to 3 working days of a person's death. And during this procedure, the person is opened up and the organs removed for examination. That's where usually I was involved if it was relevant to a crime scene, taking pictures, taking samples. It's a pretty strong-stomached job, that's for sure. These days, if a coroner is assigned to an investigation, it will be thorough, but that's not always been the case, and if no autopsy is performed, murder can be overlooked. And that's where digging up a body can help in a criminal investigation. But there are other reasons to exhume a body, such as identifying it, looking at trace evidence that may have been missed, to do a full toxicology report, or reanalyse wounds. The problem that examiners have to face is the process of embalming. Now, that usually happens at a funeral home. Now, during this process, the blood is drained and replaced with a formaldehyde compound that is pink. Now, this helps the body look a bit more flush and also preserves it for longer. So another issue is that DNA begins to degrade immediately after death. So pathologists have to be a bit clever and to take DNA from hair, molar teeth, and the petrous bone, which is found in the inner ear. An exhumation for court purposes can answer some questions about how that person lived or died, or if they need to confirm identity with living descendants, or for pathology tests, like famous painter Salvador Dali, who was exhumed for a paternity test and supposedly had his famous moustache still intact. Exhumations make sure that we've definitely got the right person that we think, so therefore they try and end popular conspiracies. However, one which hasn't been laid to rest, despite the identity checking out over and over again, is President Lincoln's assassin. Now, John Wilkes Booth, after shooting President Lincoln, ran for his life, but he was cornered in a barn and shot in 1865. There were so many rumours spreading around suggesting that the real John Wilkes Booth was still on the run, so his body was exhumed twice over the next 4 years. They found that his identity was the right one over and over again. However, that didn't stop others suggesting that they got the wrong man, and this argument continues today. Now, another really interesting exhumation case, which actually led to cold case DNA being re-examined, was back in the 1950s, where a doctor was imprisoned for supposedly bludgeoning his wife to death. There was lots of blood at the scene and it was taken, but with no DNA testing, was kept in storage. Now, Sam Shepherd served 10 years for killing his wife, proclaiming his innocence, and at a retrial was acquitted. He died in 1970 with people still whispering in the street as he went by that he was a murderer. In 1997, when DNA was more prevalent and cheaper to test, his son asked for an exhumation to compare the blood found at the crime scene to his dad's. Turned out it wasn't Sam's, but another man, Richard Eppelberg, and he'd been incarcerated for killing another woman. Now, there are many more cases like this, but one area that still sparks controversy is whether it's acceptable to dig up ancient remains or mass graves, and that argument is still ongoing. Until next time, don't forget to subscribe.